So if you hear that there's a secret space program going on, we had the technology. We can put a space plane up there. We don't need the space shuttle. We have always had that technology. Okay, so I made good friends with this person back in the computer department. I also knew a few of the airmen that worked over in the search radar tower. Something happened. They started acting a little funny, like they were real worried or something. So they came to me one Friday evening and said, we're going to go play golf up in Mobile Saturday. We need a fourth for golf. Will you come with us? Sure, why not? Why they wanted to go was not to play golf. They wanted to talk about something that had happened that was top secret, and they wanted somebody that was kind of familiar with UFOs, which was me, and they wanted to discuss it away from the radar site. There had been a lot of security people showing up, and I had no idea what was going on. Okay, here's what they told me. They said that few years before I had arrived, and when I arrived, it was me and one other airman first class that had gone to the search tower. Okay, so but they said that a few years earlier, a group of the people, it was, let's say, 3 people, 2 people from the search tower and 1 person from the computer section were sent TDY, which is temporary duty, and they were sent over here to Fort Walton Beach, to Eglin Air Force Base, to help with a new radar. I knew nothing about this radar at the time. They explained a little bit to me. It was top secret. It's been declassified for some time now. It's called an AN-FPS 85. The AN stands for Army Navy. FPS is Fixed Position System. This is the first of its kind phased array radar based on based on alien technology. Let me get my water here. Now, here's the strange thing that happened. While these 3 men were there, this was around 65, 66, they were helping to bring this new radar online. This particular radar goes into deep space. It was the most powerful radar in existence at the time. It still is. It is still operational. They've never been able to improve on it, only the computer systems. So this team of 3 people that were TDY, they were working to bring this radar online. The first day, everything went okay. They were tracking objects out in deep space. They shut it down in the evening and went home. Now, they had all driven over, since they had just a short distance to go. They had taken one of the airmen's personal cars and were using it to go back and forth from the barracks, and probably to go to the bars at night when they were off. But on the second day, something very unusual happened. It was late afternoon. They had finished their testing for the day. They had shut the system down. No one was in the building. They were driving off and had gotten about, say, a quarter of a mile away, and one of the airmen said, "What is that up in the air?" So they stopped the car and got out. One of Michael's fireballs that he sees, this orange ball come floating down out of the sky, shot a beam of light over to this building and this radar. the entire complex melted to the ground. Okay, this is something that has never been, you won't find this on documentaries, you won't find this on the internet. I'm revealing it to you. This is something that there are things out there that all these years they have managed to keep secret from us. Okay, the problem is that when the system was actually rebuilt, and let me back up and say one thing, whatever aliens were involved, they were just trying to send us a message. It's like, we know you're using technology from us. We know you can track objects the size of a basketball 22,000 miles into space. And we just want to send you a message that just to show you what we can do if we wanted to. Because remember, they waited till everybody had left so that they didn't harm anybody. They bulldozed it flat, rebuilt it, and what had happened was that the three gentlemen that I was playing golf with had been sent back to bring it online. Nothing happened. It come up. It's still there. Nothing ever happened again. But they were being asked a lot of questions by security. Somebody was very interested to know if the original event had somehow leaked. Okay, I told you there were two of us that came in the same time, brand new people. The person that came into the search tower, he was also asking a lot of questions, no UFOs and things. But they kind of wondered about him because this guy seemed a little too polished. He didn't seem like somebody that was straight out of tech school or something. This idiot, the third day that he shows up for work, one of the other airmen looks over and says, excuse me, you made a mistake. And the guy looked at him and says, what mistake did I make? He said, you forgot to take off your Air Force Academy ring. He was a spy. He said the guy looked at his hand, he turned beet red, turned around, walked out to the door, got into his car, and he was never seen again. So I asked my friends, they were telling me this while we were playing golf, and I said, why? You know, y'all thought he was a spy. Did y'all not think I was a spy also? And they just looked at me and said, no, not as green as you are. You know, I can tell you're not a spy. So, okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, I got out of the service. Time passes, and I forgot about all of this stuff that I did. I'm still interested in UFOs. I did a lot of study. And then I found out in the early 1990s that there was a series of UFO conferences going on over here in Gulf Breeze. So I decided I'm going to go see what I can find out from one of these. So I showed up at the conference, and I'm sitting there in the audience, and I'm listening to the speaker up on stage doing all of this in front of a group of people. I'm thinking to myself, you'll never catch me up there doing that, you know. But it was interesting. The same day that I was there, I went to one of the MUFON people that were putting on this show. And I'm curious, I asked you, I said, no, do y'all have, what kind of report do y'all have on this FPS-85 radar that was destroyed by a UFO? And he looked at me and said, what? I said, did you hear anything about that? Oh, and he said, yeah, I remember a good many years back, something did happen with that. We called the base, and the base told us that they had an electrical fire that had some arcing, and everything caught fire and burnt to the ground. So we closed it out. I said, okay, that's not really what happened. Would y'all be interested in, reopening this? Well, we've got a conference that we're running. We'll talk to you later. Yeah, sure. That concrete and steel building burnt to the ground, what was there to? So that's when I start wondering what is going on with these MUFON people. When I got back, I thought, let me check into this. Let me see exactly what is going on with MUFON. Are they actually investigating these things? At that particular time in the mid-1990s, we had two chapters, MUFON chapters in the state of Alabama, one in Mobile, one in Huntsville. I lived in just south of Birmingham, so I'm kind of in between. So I was driving to Huntsville every month to attend the meetings. That got to be a little hectic, so it was suggested that, well, Bob, you're so interested in this, why don't you do something on your own? So I became the first state section director for MUFON for Central Alabama. I was also the lead investigator. Everything went okay for a while. Within a year, we had the largest MUFON organization in the state of Alabama. We surpassed both of the other two. We were turning out some very, very good investigations. What happened, though, how many people in here have ever heard of Bud Hopkins? Kind of a famous, okay. I was given an investigation where someone years ago had an abduction experience that was in the small town where I lived. And I thought, hey, this is great, you know. So they came in. I spent the entire day with the person. It turned out not to be a UFO. I mean, they tell you when they're training you that, you know, at least 95 to 98% of everything should be able to be explained away. We have to do that in order to ensure that the actual investigations, good investigations, take place. I then found out that I was being used. The state director, Walt Andrus, at the time, had given this to me on behalf of Bud Hopkins. And I was actually doing research for his book. He had already taken the subject, put that person under hypnotic regression, had verified everything, and my investigation pretty much tore it apart. It kind of upset me because I wanted it to be real, but I'm an honest person. I've got to give the honest answer. Bud never recovered from it, and MUFON has always blamed me. I was the reason that Bud Hopkins never published anything up until his death. But I didn't know it. But anyway, even the investigation kind of bothered me. There were some overtones there in it that had to do with child molestation and things, and it just upset me. It wasn't an abduction. It was somebody trying to make it into one. And I ended up quitting MUFON. I then went into a new field of research called etheric science. For years, I didn't know what I was investigating. I was investigating everything. So, I mean, what is it that I'm investigating? My wife helped me come up with the term etheric science, which is the additional knowledge associated with any subject that is not normally taught or associated with that subject. Like Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story. You take anything that you've ever heard about history or UFOs or paranormal experiences, and there's always this one little bitty bit of extra information that somehow you don't hear, and that's what I went after. I wanted that extra little bit, and I would present it to people and say, try to fit it in with your paradigm. Try to see if it helps you with anything. Okay, 2011 rolls around. Just out of curiosity, I show up at one of the MUFON meetings in Huntsville. MUFON was in the process of changing things. They had all new directors. Excuse me, they had determined that from the time I had left, every single report that had been turned in the state of Alabama was worthless. Yeah, I mean, they were turning in, they had investigators that would receive a report. they would call the witness and say, "Did you actually see that?" And they would say, "Yep," and that was it. That was the investigation. So MUFON very wisely decided that they were going to completely change the way they were doing it and do actual investigations. It's all computerized, and I ended up joining MUFON again, and I was the chief investigator for 2 states, Alabama and Mississippi. Every single UFO case that was reported in those 2 states went through me. Hansel, will you do me a favor? Pass one of these that away, and one of these. These are actual MUFON reports. Everything that is of a personal nature in there that could identify someone is not there. This is what we did. These are the type reports. This will give you an idea of, how we went into this, how severe we went into it. They also put me on something called the STAR Team. STAR Team is a rapid response team that would go into an area that had a UFO landing, and you would take in all your little instruments that would measure how much the ground was compacted, if there was radiation to be detected. I had all these little devices anyway, but they put me on the STAR Team. I thought, wow, no, I'm a chief investigator, but now I'm on this STAR Team that goes out. So I waited for several weeks to find out, okay, what does that mean? Nobody ever sent me anything email. And it began to look like the STAR Team was nothing more than access to the STAR Team Facebook page. So I went online and I posted on the STAR Team website and said, hey guys, do we have a mission statement? And, what exactly is the STAR Team doing right now? Are we going to do some more training? Can we talk about some of the functions of the STAR Team? So they immediately yanked my post off, and I received via email an immediate reprimand and said, don't be a troublemaker. You can't ask those. And I'm thinking, that's being a troublemaker. So I just put the post back again. I said, guys, I'm not trying to create trouble. Just can you tell me what are we doing? What's our mission statement here? They yanked it again, sent me another reprimand and said, your status as chief investigator is now under review. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a volunteer. I'm putting a lot of, you can see from these reports we put in, it was a lot of trouble to do this. So I let them have it. I walked away from it. No longer with MUFON. Let me back up just a little bit here. When I mentioned I was going to these conferences down on the Gulf Coast, once I was state section director the first time, it kind of gave me a little bit of status that I discovered. I would hear all the speakers, all the great numbers, Kevin Randall and Stanton Friedman and John Mack, Whitley Strieber, all of these. I got to know all of them personally. After hours, after everything was through, they would have private get-togethers in their room, and I was invited. And it was amazing that at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, they've had a few drinks. I'm sipping my 7-Up, and they're starting to tell me things, which I'm going to reveal some of these. UFOs. Let me tell you what's going on right now, real quick. The flying discs and the gray aliens, we don't see those anymore. Those have kind of faded out. Mostly what we're seeing is what Michael is seeing, orange fireballs. That's what we're seeing most of. What do we know about UFOs in 2014? They're all different kinds of sizes. This is just one page. You name it, we're seeing it. We're still getting credible reports. Credible people are still reporting them, and most sightings still go unreported. And MUFON says we have no idea what they are. Our technology has closed in on some of the flight capabilities of the UFOs. So most UFO sightings of ours, we have stuff flying around right now that you cannot tell the difference. It's almost impossible to do a UFO report. We've got all these different kinds of drones flying around. We have a new generation of blimps that come out. And with the LCD technology, they're now doing advertisement on the sides of, and from a distance, these things look like some kind of weird UFO. These are the orange, this is current pictures of, this is what's being seen right now. The orange fireballs. We're seeing them singly, we're seeing them flying in formation, and this is what they look like at about the time, say, when Michael is seeing his. Now, when Michael told you during his lecture that they have no structure to them, there's not a physical something there, like a flying saucer. At MUFON, we had blown them up. We wanted to know, was there something hiding under it? This is what they look like. Michael's totally right. There's no structure. They're nothing more than fireballs. That's what they are. They're light beings. We do have a little bit of problem with people with Japanese lanterns, and we have to really, really check to make sure those don't happen. So where do they come from? Let me run through a few of these hypotheses right quick. We have the ET, extraterrestrial, they're coming from outer space. Interdimensional hypothesis, they are from another dimension, a parallel universe or another dimension altogether. The ABH hypothesis, this is the one I like, always been here, ancient aliens. They're responsible for everything from pyramids to peanut butter. I think they're running out of things on Ancient Alien Channel to give them credit for. TT, time travelers. A lot of researchers go along with this. They are actually time travelers. This is my favorite, the hybrid. It's a combination of everything. We're getting visitors from dimensions, time travel. Some have been here for a long time. It's hard to figure out exactly who we have because they're coming from everywhere. The little grays, people like to sometimes show them as a benevolent being here. And this is what they call them. Nobody ever questions why we call them the grays, because that's not quite correct. They say, well, they got gray skin. The only problem is the word gray is misspelled. We spell gray, G-R-A-Y. Why is it spelled G-R-E-Y? The reason being is it started out with H.G. Wells when he was talking about gray intelligences. G-R-E-Y is the European spelling. The gray spelling started in Europe, and when Whitley Strieber wrote his book, Communion, he called them grays with this spelling, And once Whitley Strieber said it, then that's it. It's it. From then on, it's great. This particular gray here, which you can tell is not gray, is nothing like what Whitley Strieber saw. He was always upset with the publishers. The publishers had the last call. This is totally made up. Whitley said this is absolutely nothing to what he saw. This is basically what a gray alien looks like. So let's look at this. In these late night sessions where I was talking to the researchers that had access to people that were actually involved in the autopsies from the Roswell aliens that were going on, I'm going to use this as a model. This is the little tester's plastic model, but we will use it to talk about. The Greys wore a one-piece metallic clothing, and it was a silver gray color. It had a seam in the back behind him from the neck down to the buttocks that when you closed it, it was a Velcro type of thing that when you closed it, you couldn't see the seam. There was also from the underarm down to the leg on each side another Velcro. This is how the uniforms fit. Their body temperature was a constant 89.3 degrees, and their weight varied from 85 to 60 pounds. Their hands had 4 fingers, no thumb. They had one of the fingers that could kind of bend a little bit to give the impression of a thumb. And the bone structure down through here was very strange. It was kind of a flexible tubular structure similar to cartilage. It wasn't regular bone. Even the cranium up here was soft and pliable, and at the knees and the elbows there were no joints. It was just flexible. On the end of the fingers, each finger had 3 small bumps that were like suction cups that allowed them to hold on to things. They had no teeth. They had just a simple row of cartilage inside, so they didn't chew anything. The nose was just 2 little slits with the ears were just little bumps on the side, but their hearing was exceptional. It was better than a dog's hearing. They had no reproductive systems, and several of the organs were combined. They only had 3 major organs. They had no urinary system at all, no way to excrete anything. They would sometimes ooze just a small liquid, and they would take their nourishment either through a small tube in the mouth or absorb it in through the skin. They would lay in something and absorb it. Their blood was a clear, kind of thick fluid about the viscosity of motor oil. It was clear, and it smelled of ammonia and ozone. The synopsis was that these little creatures, they were created. They were the workers. When they would abduct somebody, they would usually be either teleported up or they would grab someone and teleport, and they could even go through a window, through a wall. Now, in order to understand about these abductions as to whether or not they were actually real or not, researchers would hold back certain information that only they knew about. Some of these were the fact that there were no seams anywhere in the wall. In the ceiling, it was kind of rounded. The tables all had just one particular support. And the way the craft was constructed, I never did hear everything, but they always kept part of this secret to themselves. And when they first abducted someone, one of the aliens would stare into the person's eyes, and it's like they were looking into their very soul. It always started out with that. During these abductions, there was always like a bench where there were, and most of the time there were multiple people that were abducted. Now, as part of these multiple abductions, this gave us a clue that this was actually something that was real. The reason being, if these aliens, if they're created worker beings, they're like idiot savants. They know just what they can do, but they make mistakes. Some of the mistakes would be that after they abducted someone and they were putting their clothes back on, the buttons wouldn't be lined up right. Or if they abducted them from a hilltop here, they put them back in a hilltop over here. The funniest one that ever happened is we had this man that was being abducted in the middle of the night from his bed where he was sleeping with his wife. And she thought, my husband is losing it. What finally convinced her is that he was abducted one night, and they were sitting on the bench over here, and he was with this lady that had a nightgown. Of course, they took their clothes off to examine them. And the idiot savants, when they got ready to put them back, he woke up the next morning in the lady's nightgown. They put the nightgown on him. So he's still asleep, and the wife is shaking him and says, "Why are you wearing a nightgown?" And it's like, okay, this is, so they weren't the brightest people in the world. Okay, let me give you a few things that I learned, and we've got about 5 minutes to go here. Let me give you a few of the important things that I've learned, that I found out from these radar techs. When I was at the radar sites, we had older radar techs that would come in, and they were civilian. They were retired radar techs, and they would talk, and they told us stories. They told us that the Roswell crash was brought about on purpose by a specially modulated radar beam that the German captured paperclip scientists told them about. And this is how they brought the craft down. But one of the strangest reports that I had ever heard during this whole session concerned the Cuban Missile Crisis. We all have heard that the Russians, if they were to cross a certain line, we were going to war. We were going to fire the missiles. But Kennedy supposedly broke down and said, "No, I can't do it. I can't start World War III." According to what I heard from the techs that knew about this, was that didn't happen. We actually went to war with Russia. We declared war. We went to DEFCON 1, and Kennedy gave the message and said, "Launch the missiles." The codes, the transmission was sent out. They received the proper code words at all the missile silos. The two officers turned their keys simultaneously, hit the launch button, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Russia knew that we had gone to DEFCON 1, so they tried to launch. From what we understand, same thing happened. Somewhere, somehow, they wanted to protect us. It did not happen at all. So there's like I said, there's things out there that we haven't heard. I could probably talk on all of this stuff for for all morning. I know we got a schedule to go. Reverend Gene, you got a quick, if I can hear you.
Okay, I wanted to ask in regards to the graves, the makeup
Yeah, that's basically, yeah. They are soulless. Yes, you're absolutely. They have no souls. They're beings. They're completely biological beings, but they're engineered strictly for that one purpose. They're like idiot savants for that purpose. Yep. Then they are soulless. Yes, that is exactly right. What? We got the reptilians, we got the Nordic blondes. The people that were actually there, the beings that are the good, but are in the background. And we had two. There are two groups: the good ones and the back ones. Reverend Gene, let me throw this at you right quick. You asked me about the swan. Okay, what I did was I did it a little different this time. When I did my workshop yesterday, I gave it to my students. I said, you tell me. Okay, so they know how to do it now. They know how it works. That particular group, I said, you figure it out. And I'll tell Reverend Gene what it stands for. Okay, the swan also stands for change. But it's a different kind of change. The swan is magical change that comes from the heart. So that's what that means.
I just wanted to know when the STAR team was implemented for MUFON, was that the same time that
Bigelow, yeah, that's another whole story that we could do a whole research thing. Now, I will be here the rest of the day. I do a workshop at 3 on how to determine animal signs in nature. I'll be up in room 606 based on Ted Andrews. If anybody's familiar with Ted Andrews, before he died, he personally trained me, and I'm taking over for him for that particular. So if you see me around and want to continue and ask me questions, I'm here. No, you paid for this conference. Come and talk to me. Ask me, and we will talk too. If I can hear you.
How are people chosen for the alien abductions?
Okay, well, somebody.
How are the people chosen? How do the aliens choose?
It travels in families. It really is. It's a genetic type thing. There are certain markers, and it's usually people that have had bad experiences in life, emotional experiences. There are a lot of different factors there, but it does travel in families. Just let me make this one quick comment, and I'll be through. The reason they came, when I said they came and got me, anybody ever heard of the Philadelphia experiment? Okay, my father was one of the sailors on the boat, on the Eldridge. It happened. They came and got my son. He went into cryptology, went to Germany. I could do a whole lecture on, I haven't told you what I actually did during the service. I worked with alien technology through my whole, so there's more to this, but like I say, we got 50 minutes and that's what we're going to go with. Okay, I think that's about.
Wasn't it David Dare who blew up that young man? Wasn't his name David Dare who blew up that spaceship they were going to research on Area 51? He was a young rocket builder.
Right.
We did an interview with him, and he said, and I don't know, I'm sure you know this, but the reason he blew him up was when he laid his hand on it and it looked like metal, it changed.
Mm-hmm.
He said he realized it was a living form and he couldn't let them experiment on it, so he accidentally blew it up.
I skipped over a lot of that on the ships when I went through real quick with the ships. Their biomass. The ships are living. The ships are intelligent. The ships traveled around with the Greys. The Greys did what they were supposed to do. There was no pilot. The ship itself was intelligent. When they had an opening, it would open, it would close. But it's strictly made of biomass. They're experimenting with that now in Huntsville. They now have a little biomass cube. It's about the size of a sugar cube. That's going to be the next generation computer CPU. It's instantaneous. When you turn the computer on, there's no boot up. It's on. They have it and just haven't released it yet. A lot of things going on. So anyway, and y'all want to come talk to me, just, we need to get this moving along here, but y'all, I will come out and y'all talk to me.
Bless your heart. Listen, I want you all to just take a moment and send a prayer of invisibility and healing to this man, because he has breached a few things he probably shouldn't have done according to certain people. So let's just send prayers and invisibility to him so that he is in harm's way, not at all. And we really, really honor that. I could just spend hours communicating with this man, because when I first started doing hypnotherapy years ago as straight hypnotherapy, I ended up getting these people that one guy was this very clinical engineer, and he didn't really want to come see a weird person like me, but he did, because he kept having a recurring nightmare that when he was very young, he got left on the side of the road and couldn't find his house. Turned out he had been abducted and they dropped him off in the wrong place, and it really did occur. But he was a significant part of good research. I don't do research like certain groups do or didn't, because I didn't do this with the intention of research. I did it with the intention of healing. And so we asked him, why did they have permission to do this to you? And this man was capable of going back and looking, and while he was drifting around in space in one incarnation or another, this little bitty sad looking thing flew up to him and said, "Our whole species is dying out. Will you help us?" And being in love, as we all are, he said, "Of course I will," thinking that he was going to instantly help the guy. And well, it disappeared. That was its permission to do all this experimentation later. So be careful what you say yes to. But he's totally right on, man, I am so tickled to find you. I have interviewed, talked with, and whatever, because I have a thing outside Star Knowledge that I spent years doing, and I've met a lot of unauthentic people, or people who are just plain mistaken and meaning good. But this man is as real and as honest and as clean as he gets, because I also see auras. Bless you so much for this. Are we lucky to have him here? Oh.